Don't open it. That's what X9 warned me when I found the cryopod still active aboard the derelict ship. But I opened it anyway, and now she's awake. Her violet eyes cut straight through me, an alien from a forgotten age, a fugitive, a warrior. She could kill me in a heartbeat or become the one reason I want to stay alive. The asteroid belt isn't a place for the faint of heart. Even top-tier military ships have to watch out for rogue rocks slamming in from nowhere. But Jace Marlowe, he wasn't most people. He called it cheap freedom, far away from overcrowded space stations. Sky-high, rent, and especially unnecessary questions. X9 adjusts long-range radar. Something's up ahead. The battered old drone hovered beside him, its voice crackling with static. Scan complete derelict ship, distance 7 kilometers. Large metallic object detected. No life signs. Holy hell. That's a seagull. An ARS-85 Jace shot up from his pilot's chair, hands tightening on the worn-out controls. They stopped making those 100 years ago. His own ship, a salvage freighter named Iron Rust, drifted closer to the floating wreck. One side of the hull had been torn wide open, like something had ripped it in half, but strangely, no plasma burns, no signs of heavy weapons fire. The outer frame was almost pristine. X9. Any distress signals? Negative. All systems are silent. Based on debris, decay, it's been floating here for at least 50 years. Jace's eyes lit up. An old Seagull-class ship. Not completely wrecked, and best of all, no owners in sight. The nearest spaceport would charge him half a year's wages for a broom closet. But this was a palace, and it was just sitting here. We're taking it. Hook up the tow cables and check structural integrity. X9 rotated midair, its scratched lens flashing orange. You serious? This isn't canned beans or busted boots, Jace. We don't know why this thing was abandoned? Exactly, and I'm not about to let it slip away. Connect the cables. X9. That's an order. An hour later, the wreck was locked into stable orbit and tethered to his ship. Wearing a patched-up spacesuit, Jace floated through the breach in the hull flashlight, cutting through layers of dust and shadow. Most of the ship was wrecked. Scorched wires, shattered consoles, navigation system in ruins, but the main frame still intact. Look at this. Absolute masterpiece. He brushed grime off a control panel. Back in the day, these ships ran deep space exploration. Hull could survive solar flares, even skim the edge of a black hole without getting sucked in. I smell trouble, X9, muttered behind him. Someone shut everything down deliberately. This wasn't an accident. Jace ignored him and moved deeper into the main corridor. Everything looked eerily clean. No bodies, no personal belongings, like the crew had either evacuated or been taken. Power check, Jace said, plugging a cable from his backpack into a control port. Just give me something. Anything. A faint hiss. Emergency lights flickered weakly down the hallway, barely enough to see Jace sighed, making his way toward the lower deck. Then the air changed, colder. Heavier, his suit sensors blinked from red to blue. Something down there was drawing power. A lot of power. Jace X9's voice dropped. I'm reading abnormal heat signatures. Bottom of the hall. Something's there. Jace passed rows of empty rooms, medical base, stripped armory supply. Closets, then he saw it. A sealed door. Thicker than the others, etched with a strange crescent-shaped symbol. This wasn't human design, X9. Translate the symbol, the drone scanned the mark. Language unknown, possibly Vayari, maybe something from the Sirius sector. My best guess, caution or biohazard or cafeteria, Jace muttered, forcing a grin that didn't quite reach his stomach. Override the lock. The door creaked open with a metallic groan, dust spilling into the air like fog. Jace raised his light. Rows of pods, like glass coffins, lined the walls. All dark, all frozen. Cryochambers. X9 whispered. No power. Long dead. Jace moved in, sweeping the light across each one. Dead, panels, black screens. Then at the far end of the room, he saw it. A faint glow, so dim it was barely visible. But it was there. X9. Do you see that? That pod's still running? That's impossible. This ship's been dead for decades. Jace approached the final chamber. It was different. Not fully transparent. A thin layer of frost clung to the inside of the glass, but he felt it. Something was inside, and it was still alive. He wiped the frost away, leaning close, and for a second, his heart stopped. A figure, but not human. too delicate, too perfect. An alien? X9, everything's fried except this cryopod. It's still running. We need to leave. X9 warned, backing away. Now. But it was too late. Jace couldn't look away. In the faint green glow, a finger twitched. Then through the mist, eyes opened. Glowing violet, bright as stars in the dark. Jace, back away now. X9's voice nearly shrieked, red warning lights flashing across his battered frame. But Jace couldn't move. Those violet eyes had him locked in place. They weren't just glowing, they thought. There was awareness behind them. A consciousness trapped in frozen time. She's still alive, he whispered, fog forming on the glass from his breath. She's aware the cryo system's running, but only on minimal reserves. Backup power's almost gone, X9 said, circling the pod with anxious hums. This thing's been running decades without maintenance. It could fail at any moment. Jace pulled out his handheld terminal, jacked it into the control panel, and started typing. Lines of data poured in jagged alien script that danced like it was alive. None of it made sense. All of it encrypted. I need to decode this. I need to know who she is and why she's the only one left. Not now, Jace, X9 warned. Not before we know what she is. The Vayari were not friendly. They sided with the enemy during the Nebula Wars. That war ended 100 years ago. Jace shot back, fingers still flying. And if she was the enemy, why is she on a human ship? Why is she hidden? Suddenly, the symbols on screen shifted as if responding to him. A crescent-shaped emblem appeared, the same one from the sealed door, accompanied by pulsing Vayari glyphs. Name X9 translated. That's her name, Althea Ravarian. Althea, Jace repeated. The word felt strange on his tongue. Familiar, heavy. X9. Keep going. What else does it say? Most of the data's corrupted, but I'm reading Commander Operation and the number 296. Possibly years or a mission code. Jace looked back at the cryopod. Inside, Althea's slender form shimmered under the dim blue glow. Her hair spilled like silver across her shoulders. Her skin was pale green, almost translucent, veined with soft lines of glowing light that traced down her neck and arms like bioluminescent rivers. Check the monitoring systems, Jace said, pointing to the thin wires laced into her limbs. That's not standard cryotech. This setup, it's military grade. X9 scanned it. Confirmed Vayari. High security, cryo-containment designed to preserve consciousness during stasis. Not to protect, to imprison. The word hit Jace like a cold slap. Imprison? He looked closer at the pod. Now he saw the extra shielding, the reinforced locks. This wasn't just a chamber. It was a cell. She's a prisoner or something too dangerous to release. X9 replied grimly. High-level alien biology? We don't know what she is, Jace. We don't understand what she is. Jace took a step back, but his eyes stayed locked on hers, violet and luminous and pleading. Or was that just his mind playing tricks? He checked the backup energy display. Only a few hours left. After that, the system fails, he said quietly. Then we leave before that happens, X9 replied. Problem solved, and let her die, Jace snapped. No, be rational, Jace. She could be the enemy. A military prisoner, an unknown alien entity under containment. Every reason to walk away, every reason to keep living the way he always had. Solo, simple, clean, but those eyes. Damn it, I'm not opening it, he muttered. I'm saving her. Prepare the auxiliary power lines on the iron rust. We're moving the entire pod of X9 recoiled. Jace, that hardware is hard mounted to the ship. Then I'll cut it out. Jace snapped, pulling off his helmet for a breath. Go back, get the plasma saw and a mobile power unit. While X9 zipped back to the rust, Jace kept digging through the encrypted files. Commander prisoner, most of it was garbled, but then he found a timestamp, 296 years. She had been in stasis nearly 3 centuries. How did you survive this long? He whispered, resting a hand against the cold glass. And why did they leave you here alone on a dead ship? She didn't answer. But as he leaned closer, he noticed a single frozen tear glinting on her cheek. X9 returned with the tools. For the next 3 hours, Jace carefully cut the pod free, one plasma slice at a time. He kept life support running through temporary power links, knowing one slip could end it all. Finally, the cryopod was aboard. The iron rust bolted to the middle of the living quarters, taking up nearly the entire room. Jace plugged it into the ship's primary core power. Flowing system, stabilizing, X9 reported. But Jace, what happens when she wakes up? What if she's hostile? What if she's dangerous? Jace tightened the last connector, sweat dripping down his temple. Then I'll deal with it when it happens. Suddenly, the control panel lit up brighter than before. With full power restored, the pod's auto-recovery sequence kicked in. A low hum filled the room. Vayari text began to scroll across the screen. Warming sequence initiated. X9 translated. Nervous Jace, it's waking her up. No, that's not. I didn't activate anything, Jace shouted frantically, pressing buttons. It's automated, X9 said quickly. Programmed to trigger at a specific energy threshold. It's happening whether we want it to or not. Frost on the glass began to melt. Blue fluid inside the chamber slowly drained away. One by one, the cables detached from her body, leaving soft red marks on her pale skin. Jace stood there frozen. He'd just broken a cycle that had lasted 300 years, and now he was about to face the consequences. Althea's eyes, those brilliant violet eyes, fluttered open. But this time, Uoy, it wasn't a dream. She was awake, and she was aware. A sharp hiss echoed through the ship as the cryopod's glass lid slowly slid open. A wave of cold mist spilled out, turning the air heavy, thick with ancient frost. Jace instinctively stepped back, hand hovering over his sidearm, a compact plasma pistol. Just in case, biological systems. Stable X9 whispered, scanning quickly. But her vitals are fluctuating. She's waking up. Althea didn't move at first. Then slowly, her fingers twitched, slender and elegant, almost too delicate to be real. The glowing lines beneath her pale green skin pulsed brighter, as if energy were rushing back into her veins. Jace swallowed hard. She's beautiful, and she was, but not in any way Earth could claim. That face, sharp, ethereal, perfectly sculpted, hair like liquid silver spilling across her shoulders. She wasn't human. She was Vayari, a species few had ever seen in person. He'd only glimpsed them in dusty old archives and news feeds. Beautiful and dangerous, X9 warned, activating security protocol. Jace gave a slight nod, but he couldn't take his eyes off her. She was breathing, really breathing. Something ancient, something alien had just opened its eyes again right in front of him. A blink, then another. Hi, Jace said, trying to keep his voice steady. I'm Jace Marlowe. He didn't finish. In the blink of an eye, she moved too fast for his brain to register. Suddenly, his back hit the wall. One hand clutched his throat, the other held a jagged shard of cryoglass inches from his eye. Vanotech, she rasped, voice raw and unused for centuries. You will not take my DNA. I'd rather die. Her violet eyes locked onto his, no longer pleading. Now they burned with cold fury. Jace choked, unable to breathe. X9 launched forward, but Althea swept her leg out in a precise, brutal arc, slamming the drone into the wall with a metallic thud. Not Vanotech, Jace gasped. I saved you. Althea searched his face, reading his eyes for lies. After a tense beat, her grip loosened just enough. Uniform, prove it. Jace motioned downward, grease-stained tank top, patched-up work pants, mechanic independent. She scanned the room, fast calculating. Her eyes swept over the controls, the mess, the chaos, then she froze. What year is it, she demanded. 2462, Jace said. September 3rd. Interstellar trade cycle, which Althea's hands dropped. She stumbled back a step, like time itself had just punched her in the gut. No, that's not possible. I was only meant to sleep for 50 years. You've been under for almost 300, Jace said gently, rubbing his neck. Your pod's life support, auto-adjusted to preserve you, your people, they never came back. For a moment, her face cracked. Not anger, not fear, just hurt. But only for a second, then her expression steel cold sharp. Unreadable. They're not my people, not anymore. They betrayed me. She looked like she was about to say more, then her body trembled. The glow beneath her skin flickered. She collapsed to one knee, gripping the edge of the cryopod. Her strength was draining fast. Her systems are unstable. At X9 said, regaining altitude. Her body's not ready to function after extended stasis. Jace stepped toward her, but she raised a trembling hand. Don't touch me, she gasped, sweat forming on her brow. I need to adapt. But she didn't have time. Her eyes rolled back, her knees buckled. Jace caught her just before she hit the ground. She was light, too light, like her bones were hollow. X9, giving me a full scan. The drone zipped into motion, scanning rapidly. Temporary unconsciousness. Her systems are in a bio-reboot phase, like an old terminal booting. After decades offline, Jace lifted her carefully and carried her to his bed. The only bed aboard the Iron Rust, find me. Everything you can on Vayari physiology. What does she need? Scanning database. Vayari require lower ambient temperatures and high humidity. X9 reported, darting toward the environmental panel, setting to 16 degrees Celsius. Humidity to 70%. Jace pulled the blanket over her, hesitating as her skin visibly shimmered with micro-movements. What about food? Water data incomplete. They're partially phototrophic. Absorb energy through light. She needs UV. Jace bolted to the medical bay, activated a UV panel, and angled it toward her. Then he returned to the cryopod, now empty, and linked his terminal to its data port. I need answers, he said aloud. Who she is, why she was locked away, and why she mentioned Vanotech. That corp's only been around for a few decades. Vanotech isn't new. X9 said, its tone darkening. They've existed since the 21st century, under different names, always working in advanced biology, always hunting for alien specimens. Jace turned to look at Althea. She wasn't threatening anymore, she just looked alone. She thought we were hunters, out to take her DNA. Maybe that's exactly why she was sealed away, X9 said grimly. Suddenly, the terminal screen flared to life. Data streaming Vayari script, fuzzy images, translation coming in. X9 reported that Operation Luke Von Commander Althea Ravarian, Fleet 7, Vayari Forward Core Assignment, Defend Species Cluster 72B, from Purge Event, Jace frown. Species Cluster, you got more on that, only rumors. X9 replied. Around 300 years ago, when humans first encountered the Vayari, there were whispers entire species wiped out in a remote sector. Official cause natural disaster, but unofficially failed biological experiments. More footage played Althea in full uniform, standing proud before a crowd, discharged, betrayed, mission suspended. X9 translated subtitles as they appeared. She refused to follow something called Protocol Ether. The next clip was chaos flashes of light, explosions screaming at Althea on the run. The crowd turned against her. A headline blared, Traitor General escapes. Human collaborators suspected. Traitor General Jace repeated, staring at the screen. She turned against her own and paid the price, X9 said. Looks like she sided with humanity and they hunted her for it. The final image was a still, Althea younger, proud, in full dress uniform. Beside her, a human man, both smiling. She had allies, Jace whispered. Among us, but now she's alone. From behind him, a voice rasped, not entirely alone. Jace spun around. Althea was awake. Her violet eyes were locked on his. But you still haven't proven you're not the enemy. 2 days, that's how long the tension lasted, a silent standoff between Jace and Althea. Two wild animals caged in a space too small for either of them. Jace tried to be friendly. Althea questioned his every move. I don't get it, Jace muttered, sliding a food tray across the table toward her. I saved your life. Why do you still think I'm a threat? Althea eyed the meal with open suspicion, a reheated frozen pasta and a nutrient cube. For all I know, your kind has had 3 centuries to refine their hunting tactics. How do I know this isn't laced with tracking agents? Because it's cheap, tastes like cardboard, and there are only 2 servings left in the freezer, Jace said dryly. Trust me, if I had designer drugs, I'd use them on myself. A 9 hovered overhead, keeping a careful distance from Althea. She's recovering rapidly. Bioreadings are up 63% since reanimation. Althea poked at the pasta with a pair of chopsticks, then reluctantly took a small bite. She chewed, grimaced, and swallowed. You call this food? I call it not starving. Jace shrugged. Iron Rust isn't exactly 5-star hospitality. Iron Rust, Althea echoed, glancing around the cramped, aging ship. Fitting name. Everything on this vessel is ancient, even by my standards. Jace watched as she carefully explored the cabin. Every step precise, every movement calculated. She moved like a hunter in unfamiliar territory. Her fingers drifted across the metal surfaces, eyes absorbing every detail with quiet curiosity. Your tech hasn't progressed as far as I expected, she commented. Or maybe your tech just jumped too far ahead, Jace shot back. Not all of us have reality-bending wormhole drives, like the Vayari. Althea turned sharply, eyes narrowed. My civilization no longer exists the way you think. The galaxy has changed more than I ever imagined. There was something heavy in her voice, not just grief, loss on a planetary scale. And Jace realized she hadn't just lost comrades. She'd lost her entire world. Here, he said softly, let me show you something. He walked to the main console and activated the holo display. A three-dimensional map of the galaxy flickered into the air, or color-coded with borders and alliances. This is the Interstellar Coalition. He pointed to a large swath of blue. Humans, Vayari, Andromedans, 30 other species. One alliance, no major wars in over 100 years. Althea moved closer, drawn to the image like a moth to flame. That's impossible. The Andromedans were natural enemies of the Vayari. Not anymore, Jace said. Not since the Centauri Accord free trade. Open borders, cross-species, genoflow. Everything changed. Althea shook her head in disbelief. Humans can't change their nature that fast. You're a warrior species. So were you, Jace replied. General Althea froze, her violet eyes flashed dangerously. Don't call me that. Sorry, Jace said quickly. But maybe we've got more in common than you think. I'm hiding from society. You're hiding from everyone. I'm not hiding, she snapped, but her voice lacked conviction. Okay, enough serious talk, Jace said, sensing the tension spike. Let me introduce you to humanity's greatest invention in the last 300 years. He ducked under the console, pulled out a small silver box and opened it like it contained a holy relic. Miniature frozen pizza, he announced proudly. Pre-cooked, multiple flavors, no refrigeration needed. Althea stared at the greasy slice like he'd gone mad. You're joking. Dead serious. Try it better than the pasta. I swear. With obvious hesitation, Althea picked up the pizza slice. After a brief pause, she took a bite. Her eyes widened. This is acceptable, she admitted. Surprised, behold the glory of human achievement, Jace grinned. See, we're not completely useless. X9 floated closer, emitting a subtle warning tone. For the record, she could still kill you with that pizza slice. Ignore my overly dramatic drone, Jace said to Althea. It's been dropped too many times, and then something shifted. Just barely, but there it was. The corner of Althea's mouth twitched upward. Not a full smile, but close progress. Stage 2 of your Earth Culture Tour. Jace continued activating the entertainment interface. Digital entertainment. Holograms blinked into view. Movies, books, and games. Althea watched with growing curiosity. Jace scrolled through a few titles, then stopped at an old-school game called Space Beast Hunter Classic, he said. You play as a bounty hunter chasing down monsters across the galaxy. That's a Zorblat. Althea interrupted, pointing at one of the creatures. A what, Zorblat? She repeated. They were common pets on Vayar Prime. My family had 3. Jace blinked at the image, an ugly 6-legged beast with fangs and dripping tentacles. That was your pet. They're very loyal, she said softly and intelligent. Mine was named Miri. She used to curl up under my bed every night, and then the impossible happened. Althea laughed. Just a short, genuine laugh, barely a second, but it was real and it changed everything. The game dev must have seen a real one, she said, smiling faintly, but they made it look far more terrifying. Miri would curl into a ball when you scratched her belly. Jace couldn't help but laugh too. The idea of this lethal alien warrior baby-talking a tentacled horror was absurd. The universe is weird, he said. It is. Althea agreed, her smile fading as she turned back toward the holomap. In 300 years, everything has become so strange. She stared at the new borders, the new alliances. My war is over, isn't it? She said quietly. Everything I fought for, everything I lost, it's all gone. I think it still matters, Jace replied gently. Maybe not the way you hoped, but it's not forgotten. Althea looked at him, really looked at him. Her violet eyes didn't burn this time. They searched. When I was awake, your kind were the most violent species in the galaxy. Oh, we still fight, Jace said with a half smile. We've just learned to fight for different things. Rights, freedom, opportunity. Less for land, less for power. Althea went quiet for a long time, as if she was trying to wrap her mind around a galaxy she no longer recognized. Finally, she said, I need to see more. Learn more, everything that's changed. We've got time, Jace said reassuringly. Iron rust isn't luxury, but it's safe, and there's plenty of frozen pizza. I have nowhere else to go, Althea admitted, and for the first time her voice carried real vulnerability. Neither do I, Jace said, and it was the truth. Maybe that's what makes us alike. If you've ever met someone who felt like a total mystery, but you just couldn't stop caring, hit that subscribe button to hear the rest of the story. A week had passed, a strange, quiet week of slow adjustments. Althea was growing stronger, and Jace more curious by the hour. They had crossed a line, no longer enemies, but not quite allies. something closer to trust, or at least the start of it. That night, Jace found her standing by the observation window, gazing out into the asteroid belt. Thousands of rocks spun and collided in a never-ending celestial dance. Their reflections lit up the lines of her face, the glowing threads beneath her skin pulsing softly. Couldn't sleep, Jace asked, stepping closer but keeping his distance. He'd learned Vayari valued their personal space. Vayari don't sleep as much as your kind. She replied, eyes still locked on the stars, and there's too much to think about. Jace nodded and leaned against the opposite wall. X9's powered down, just you and me. In a strange way, it was an invitation. With no drone hovering or cracking sarcastic comments, the room felt quieter. More private, Althea seemed to understand. She turned away from the window. You want the whole story, she said. Not a question, but a fact. I think I owe you that. Jace admitted, it's been a week and I haven't asked why you were on that ship. She took a deep breath as if deciding whether to let the weight of history finally fall. Then she walked over to the main console where Jace kept a cheap bottle of whiskey. She poured herself a shot, sniffed it, and took a small sip. Stars, that's awful, she grimaced. Worse than the pasta. Jace chuckled and the tension cracked just a bit. But it works, so it does, she said, taking another sip. I'm Commander Althea Ravarian, Fleet 7 Vayari Forward Corps. You already knew that. I also know they called you the traitor, General, Jace said carefully. Althea let out a sharp laugh. Funny how a title lasts longer than the memory of the person behind it. She took another drink. I didn't betray anyone. I just refused an order. What kind of order? The kind that would have wiped out a newly established human colony, she said flatly. 4,000 innocent lives. It was a small-scale test to see if the Vayari military could erase all traces of human DNA on a planet. No one would miss. Jace froze. Why to prepare for something bigger? Althea continued. A full-scale plan called Protocol Ether. The systematic purge of all human colonies in the Orion Belt. Genocide, Jace whispered. But it never happened, she said, turning to face him. Because I refused the order. I warned the first human. I could find a scientist named Michael Hayes. Jace's mind flashed to the image in the recovered data. Althea Younger, standing beside a human man, the man in the photo. She nodded. Hayes took it to the highest levels. The plan got exposed. The Vayari Council was forced into damage control. They needed a scapegoat. You, Jace said quietly. And Hayes, she added, voice tightening. My Commander Marshal Zarin declared I'd been brainwashed by humans, that I made the whole thing up to fracture the species alliance. She paused. Hayes was assassinated in his home. I was sentenced to death. But you escaped, Jace finished, with help, she said. Some in my unit still believed in me. They smuggled me onto a merchant vessel bound for the farthest human outpost, but Zarin sent assassins. I was wounded badly. I didn't make it to the colony. There was only one option left. Cryo-sleep, Jace said. Althea nodded. Cryo was new back then. Unstable, experimental. I planned to sleep 50 years, long enough for Zarin to die of age or politics. But the system evolved, adapted to preserve me 300 years. She set the glass down. Her violet eyes dimmed. I chose stasis over surrender. And when I woke up, everything was gone. Zarin, Hayes, even the war. I tried to stop. It's now just a footnote in forgotten history. But you're still here, Jace said softly. And because of you, that purge never happened. That wasn't me, Althea said, shaking her head. That was Hayes. I was just the messenger. You betrayed your entire civilization to protect humanity, Jace said, stepping closer. That's not just anything. And what did I get in return, she asked bitterly. 3 centuries later. I'm still a fugitive, no home, no people, just an aging ship, and me, Jace said, finishing her sentence. A weird mechanic with a grumpy drone. For the first time, Althea laughed, really laughed. Not exactly the heroic ending I imagined. Wait, you thought you were the hero? Jace asked, not mocking, but genuinely curious. No, she said seriously. I just couldn't stand by and let genocide happen. I'm not a hero, Jace. I'm just not a butcher. Jace stepped even closer now. Just a few feet away. I think that's exactly what makes you a hero, Althea. He hesitated. I can't imagine what it's like to wake up and realize the universe moved on without you. That's the worst part, she whispered, barely audible. Not being light years away in space, but being centuries behind in time. Everyone I loved, everyone I hated, everyone I hope to see again. All gone, dust. No, Jace said firm this time. You're not alone. Althea looked at him, skeptical, guarded. You don't have to trust all of humanity, Jace said, stepping closer. Just trust me. Why should I? She asked quietly, but there was a challenge in her voice now. Because I could have left you behind, and I didn't. Because I risked everything to keep you safe, and because what she pushed. Because I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since the moment your eyes opened in that cryopod, Jace admitted, blood rushing to his cheeks. Althea stared at him, searching for a lie. There wasn't one, just a man standing alone in the universe, holding on to something rare, something fragile. Then she reached for him. Her long, delicate fingers brushed the back of his hand. Jace flinched, startled. It was the first time she had touched him willingly. No tension, no force, just connection. In Vayari culture, she said softly, touching someone outside your family, especially skin to skin, is taboo. Deeply taboo. Jace froze, afraid to even breathe. Then why now? He whispered. Because I don't belong to that world anymore, she said, fingers still resting on his. Because you were right, I do need someone to trust, and maybe that's you. The light from the asteroid belt flickered across her face, tracing alien curves that no longer felt alien at all. And in her eyes, he saw something achingly human. The fear of being left behind again. I won't let you down. Jace whispered, the weight of that promise heavy on his chest. Althea gave the smallest nod, then slowly pulled her hand away. The moment passed, but something new and fragile had taken its place. I trust you, she said. 3 simple words, and the greatest gift she could offer. 2 days after that night, everything between Jace and Althea felt different. Not dramatically, just the little things, longer glances, sitting closer together at the console, and every now and then something rare, a real smile from Althea. They were building something, a rhythm, a quiet kind of life carved out in the middle of nowhere. Jace was deep in the wreckage of the old ship, salvaging parts he could still use. Althea worked beside him, her hands steady and precise, expertly dismantling devices he wouldn't have even known could be dismantled. You're really good with human tech, he said, watching her unclip a complex motion controller with practiced ease. I studied it, Althea replied, to understand my enemies. And now, he asked, raising an eyebrow, are we still your enemies? She looked up, and for the first time there was a flicker of mischief in her eyes. No. Now I study it because we're running out of whiskey, and this junk might buy us another bottle. Jace laughed, warm in a way he hadn't felt in a long time. Well, pick up the pace then. I can work for a few more hours, Jace. X9 burst into the room, sirens blaring. Incoming vessel 12 minutes out. Both Jace and Althea were on their feet instantly, in deep space, especially this far out. An incoming vessel was almost never good news. Run an ID scan, Jace ordered, rushing toward the cockpit. Scanning X9 replied as the 3 of them gathered around the main console, medium-class freighter. Registered as Helios Ascendant, but what? Althea pressed, tension creeping into her voice. Signature inconsistencies. The ID doesn't match the ship type. And X9 hesitated. Weapon systems are active. Helios Ascendant. Althea repeated, her violet eyes sharpening. Vanotech likes names like that. Inspirational sounding, to disguise something much darker. Jace scrolled through the sensor feed, activating long-range scans. How the hell did they find us? How could they know? When her cryopod reactivated, X9 cut in, circling the console. It likely triggered a distress ping, a beacon. The system was designed for retrieval, but it's 300 years old, Jace protested. Vanotech collects old tech, Althea said grimly. They hunt what they call biological relics. And I'm one of the rarest ones. Jace didn't need her to explain further. He'd heard the stories, how Vanotech wrapped its cruelty in the shiny corporate packaging and stopped at nothing to get what they wanted. How much time do we have? 10 minutes, maybe less, X9 said. They're accelerating. They know I'm here, Althea whispered, staring past the screens. They know exactly what I am. Someone in my old command must have survived, or had children continuing their work. I need to hide the ship, Jace muttered, fingers flying over the controls. X9 plot a course into the shadow of a large asteroid. Now X9 linked into the flight systems. But before they could move, Althea's hand landed on Jace's shoulder. No, Jace. If it's Vanotech, they'll have sensors powerful enough to see us. No matter where we go, they'll just track us into the rocks, and then we're trapped. Both of us. Then what do we do? Jace asked, fear creeping into his voice. I can't take on a fully armed freighter with iron rust. This thing's barely held together. We split up, Althea said, locking eyes with him. I'll take one of the shuttles, draw them away. They'll follow me. No, it's the only way, she said firmly. If they capture me, they'll freeze me, again or worse. Use my DNA to make something worse. But at least you'll be safe. I'm not letting you go alone, Jace said, grabbing her shoulders. Not after everything. Not after how far we've come. How far is that? Althea said softly. 10 days on a junk ship. The most important 10 days I've had in years, Jace said. You're the first person He trailed off, searching for the word. You've what? She asked, cared about. She blinked, genuinely surprised, but before she could answer, the console lit up with a new signal. They're broadcasting. X9 warned. Open channel. Jace hit the button. A face appeared. A silver-haired man in a pristine suit, smiling a smile that never reached his eyes. Greetings, Iron Rust, he said, voice smooth like polished marble. I'm Director Elias Verne, Acquisitions Division, Vanotech Corporation. I hope we can reach a mutually beneficial arrangement. I don't know what you're talking about, Jace said, keeping his tone calm. I'm just a freelance mechanic. Verne's smile widened, but his eyes stayed cold. Please, Mr. Marlowe, let's not waste time. Our sensors picked up a unique signal from your ship 3 days ago, an ancient Vayari military code 1. We've been tracking for, quite a few decades. Jace glanced at Althea. She remained out of frame, frozen in place. I don't have anything you want, Jace said, voice tightening. On the contrary, Verne replied, we know you're harboring a Class Omega biological relic, a one-of-a-kind sample from the Nebula War era. A living Vayari. I wonder what she looks like after 3 centuries on ice. Jace's heart stopped. They knew everything. I'm authorized to offer you a generous deal. Verne continued. 20 million credits, a new ship, in exchange for the asset. She's not an asset, Jace growled through clenched teeth. Verne's smile faded into something colder. Everything has a price, Mr. Marlowe. Even loyalty, I'll give you 5 minutes to consider my offer. After that, I'm afraid we'll have to resort to less cooperative methods. The screen cut to black silence, heavy crushing. They won't stop, Althea finally said, still staring at the dead screen. This is just the first team. If they fail, more will follow. I don't care, Jace said, turning toward her. I'm not giving you up. I don't care what they offer. They'll kill you, she said, her voice shaking. And then they'll still take me. Then we need a plan, Jace said, suddenly filled with adrenaline. X9, how many auxiliary shuttles are still operational? 2 X9 replied, Shuttle Alpha and Pod B. Both only good for short-range hops. Jace yanked open his weapons locker, 2 plasma pistols. 1 stun grenade, not enough firepower to take them head-on, he muttered. They won't expect us to strike first, he added, ideas sparking. You want to attack a Vanotech gunship with 2 pistols? Althea snapped, incredulous. No, Jace smirked. I want to attack them with what they want, Althea asked, confused. Not you, Jace said, turning toward the empty cryopod still sitting in the middle of the room. The idea of you. 5 minutes, Jace muttered, fingers flying over the console. X9 stripped the transponder from the cryopod. Now, the drone zipped over, buzzing as it got to work on the now empty chamber. Althea watched him closely, suspicion flickering across her face. What's the plan, she asked. Vanotech wants an ancient Vayari, Jace said, eyes still on his work. Then we give them one, or at least something that feels like one. There's no time for anything complex, Althea warned. Doesn't have to be. Just enough to distract them, Jace replied with sharp focus. X9 load auto-launch protocols for Shuttle Alpha done, X9 replied, floating back with a glowing blue device, the cryopod signal core. The beacon is still transmitting. Perfect, Jace said. Install it in the shuttle program. A direct course into the asteroid belt. Set it to blow in 7 minutes. You're creating a decoy. Althea realized, her eyes lighting up. Exactly. Jace nodded. Send them chasing a ghost while we escape on Pod B, she finished. But Vanotech won't be fooled easily. They'll see through it. Not if we give them real Vayari DNA, Althea said seriously. But I'll need some of my biological components. She reached into a hidden compartment on her suit and retrieved 3 tiny glowing violet crystals, exactly the color of her eyes. These are biocores. They're linked to Vayari DNA. They're why I survived cryo-sleep in the first place. She's right, X9 confirmed. Vanotech will detect those signatures. They'll believe it's real. But you need them, Jace protested. They power your biosystems. I'll keep one, she said gently, removing one crystal. Enough to stay functional. But it won't be pleasant. You're weakening yourself for my plan, Jace asked, stunned. No, Althea replied, her voice calm and resolute. I'm weakening myself so we survive. There's a difference. There was no time to argue. X9 secured the 2 biocores inside Shuttle Alpha alongside the cryo-signal emitter. Meanwhile, Pod B, a smaller, older escape craft, was fueled and prepped. 3 minutes X9. Warned, they're closing in, Jace glanced at Althea. She already looked paler. The glow beneath her skin was dimming. You sure you're up for this? I've survived worse, she said, but her voice had lost some of its usual strength. All right, Jace said, watching the Vanotech ship draw closer on the display. Weapons already hot. When I say now, we launch the shuttle. Exactly 5 seconds later, we launch Pod B direction X9 asked, opposite vectors towards Ceres Station. Far enough they won't find us for a while, close enough we can reach it before fuel runs out. 1 minute X9 counted. Althea stepped beside Jace. She didn't speak, just reached for his hand, touched him. For only the second time she broke her own cultural rule, Jace. If this doesn't work, it will, he said, squeezing her fingers. I promise, 30 seconds. Now Jace shouted. Shuttle Alpha launched, rocketing into the black, carrying the DNA beacons and the cryo-transponder. Seconds later, their sensors picked up the Vanotech vessel. Adjusting course, hooked, it chased after the bait. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. Pod B fired, accelerating in the opposite direction. Cramped and cold, it held Jace, Althea, and X9, packed in like cargo. Althea slumped against the wall, her light dimming fast. They're following. Shuttle Alpha X9 reported. Distance increasing. Good. Jace sighed, punching in the autopilot course. Just need them chasing ghosts 5 more minutes. But fate had other plans. 2 minutes later, Pod B jolted violently. Tractor beam X9 warned. Vanotech's ship is redirecting. They found us. Jace looked out the rear viewport. There it was, the Vanotech freighter. Huge, cold, predatory. Its beam latched on, dragging them back. They saw through the decoy. Althea said, voice fading. They detected the real signal, too fast. I thought the biocores would hold longer. You're too weak, Jace said, panic rising. Those cores, they're hurting you. She didn't argue. She just looked out at the oncoming ship. We can't let them take us, she whispered. You know what they'll do? Jace scanned the console. There had to be something, anything. Then he saw it. A large asteroid drifting silently ahead. X9, dump everything into main thrusters. Target that asteroid. The beam will fight us, X9 warned. Exactly, Jace said. But if we get close enough, Althea understood instantly. The gravity well. It'll disrupt the tractor beam. But it'll be rough, X9 warned. It's the only shot we've got, Jace shouted. Do it. Pod B groaned under the stress. Its tiny engines screamed as they fought the beam. Dragging them ever closer to the asteroid's surface, Vanotech realized too late. They intensified the pull. The ship's hull moaned, engines overheating. X9 warned it can't hold much longer. Just a little closer, Jace hissed. Then boom, a deep explosion. The main engine blew. We're drifting, X9 yelled. No thrust. But they were close enough. Gravity took over. The tractor beam flickered. Lost grip, and now. Jace yelled, slamming the emergency thrusters. Pod B spun out of control and crashed into the asteroid's surface. The impact was brutal. Metal screamed, panels shattered, then silence. Darkness and pain. Jace opened his eyes. Wet. He looked down. Blood, lots of it. A metal shard had pierced his side. The pain hit late. But when it came, it was fire, Althea. He groaned. X9. Here came X9's voice, damaged, flickering but still alive. Most systems down, Vanotech is scanning. But the asteroid is scrambling their sensors. Althea, Jace rasped. Where is she? Here came a weak voice. She was barely standing, slumped against the wall, pale as snow. You're hurt, she said, staring at the wound in his side. I'm fine, Jace lied, trying to sit up. He failed. The pain crushed him. You're losing too much blood, she said, crawling toward him. X9 medkit, destroyed in the crash, X9 replied. Along with most of the ship, distress signal, Jace asked, vision, fading active but weak. X9 replied, if Vanotech scans the right frequency, they'll find us, or worse, before anyone else does. Althea knelt beside him. Her violet eyes shimmered dark with fear. You won't last until help comes. That wound is too deep. So this is it, Jace said softly, trying to smile through the haze. At least I got you away from Vanotech. You can hide here. Start over. Start over. Althea repeated. Her voice trembled, then hardened. Again. No, Jace. I've left behind enough. I've lost too much. I won't lose you, too. She stood staggering but determined and walked toward the exit. Where are you going? He whispered. To find something that can save you, she said, not looking back. Althea, don't, Jace begged. Vanotech's still out there. At the door, she turned eyes blazing with resolve. When we met, I told you I wasn't attached. That I didn't go back, and I've lived that way for 3 centuries, she inhaled. Not anymore. Before he could stop her, she was gone. Disappearing into the jagged terrain. X9. Jace whispered. Stop her, I can't, the drone replied. And even if I could, I don't think you'd want me to. She's already chosen. Jace faded into unconsciousness. Darkness. Silence, then light. He woke, still in Pod B, still bleeding. But something had changed. A familiar shape was hunched over him. Althea, he whispered. Don't talk. She said, her voice stronger now. In her hand, a glowing violet crystal. The last of her biocores. I made it back to Shuttle Alpha. It crashed nearby after the decoy detonated. The core, Jace breathed. No, you need it. Without it, you'll fade, she said bitterly. Maybe weeks, not days, long enough to find something else. She placed the crystal over his wound. It's Vayari tech. It'll merge with your cells, just long enough to stabilize you. Why, he asked, feeling warmth flooded his veins. After everything you have already lost, Althea looked at him. Eyes glowing like stars in the dark, because for the first time in 300 years, I've found something worth coming back for, Jace Marlowe. She smiled, and I won't lose it again. Rescue signal acquired, X9 announced, circling the cramped put interior. Border Patrol ship inbound ETA 30 minutes. Althea sat beside Jace, her hand still resting on the biocore as it fused slowly into his body. Her skin had lost its natural glow, pale now, almost translucent, but her eyes still burned that brilliant violet. What about Vanotech? Jace asked, his voice steadier as the core's energy spread through him. They're gone, X9 answered. They scanned the area for 2 hours, then pulled back. Probably didn't want to get caught by Interstellar Coalition patrols hunting a specimen. They'll be back, Althea said firmly. Not today, not this week, but they will come again. Jace looked down at the wound on his stomach. The bleeding had stopped. The tissue was already regenerating. Thanks for saving my life, Althea replied, the corner of her mouth tugging up. You saved me first, at the cost of your last power source, he said quietly. How could you, X9, accessed old research logs? I've got a few weeks without the core, she cut him off. And we've located a potential source to make more an abandoned Vayari research station on Ceres Minor. You think it's still functional? Jace asked, doubtful. There's only one way to find out, Althea said, turning her gaze to the stars beyond the window. 2 days later, they were aboard the patrol ship en route to Ceres Minor. Jace's wounds had healed 80%, but Althea was fading her energy, dimming with each passing day. We're here, the patrol commander announced, Ceres Minor. Not much traffic here anymore. Main trade routes shifted. Through the viewport, they saw it, a massive wheel-shaped station slowly turning in the dark. It wasn't gleaming or bustling like other hubs. Only a few lights flickered through its hull. Thanks for the ride, Jace said, steadying Althea as she stumbled. We'll handle things from here. You sure, the commander asked, weighing Althea. There is better med care on the bigger stations. I mean your, partner? My girlfriend Jace said quickly. And we have people here. We'll be fine. They docked at one of the few operational bays and stepped onto the station, a ghost town floating in the void. This used to be a military research hub. X9 explained, leading the way. After the peace accord, it was decommissioned. A few independent businesses hung on, but most pulled out. Perfect place to disappear, Althea said, leaning into Jace. They passed empty quarters, dark shops, and sealed-off labs, until they reached their destination. Interspecies Biolab 7, a wide steel door marked with a faded double helix emblem. This is it, X9 said. If anywhere still holds Vayari biocore synthesis tech, it's behind this door. Jace stepped forward, brushing dust off the panel, mocked X9. Ancient encryption should be easy. Seconds later, the door hissed open with a screech. Inside, the lights blinked to life. Everything was intact. Equipment consoles. And in the center of the room, a biosynthesis chamber. No way. Althea whispered, eyes wide. It still works. Looks like the Coalition kept this lab powered probably for contingency research. X9 added, minimal maintenance needed. We can make new biocores here, Jace said, staring in awe. Not just that, Althea said, approaching the chamber. If this is fully operational, we can make enhanced medical compounds, even custom nutrition blends. You could restore the lab, Jace said, energy rising. Get it running again. She turned toward him, and for the first time since they met, a real smile spread across her face, and I know how to use this tech. What do you two plan to do with this place? X9 asked, circling a nearby console. They exchanged a look, the kind of look only people with a shared dream understand. 3 months later, the Ceres minor station remained quiet, but in the far corner of its forgotten trade ring, a new light burned from the window of what used to be Interspecies Biolab 7. Now a new sign hung above the door. Second dawn, a sun rising behind a planet, a sapling sprouting from high-tech soil. Inside the lab had transformed. Research stations reorganized into open seating. A long bar replaced half the diagnostic counters. The synthesis chamber still sat at the center, but now surrounded by stools, cables, and supply drawers. Part cafe, part clinic, part sanctuary. Jace crouched over a busted module, tools moving fast. X9 floated nearby, newly polished with upgraded plating. Althea stepped out of the small kitchen, her skin glowing again. Soft lines of light tracing her arms. A violet biocore pulsed on her chest, a custom version built with lab-grade Vayari tech and Jace's handiwork. Customers are here, she said, wiping her hands on an apron, mining crew from the outer belt. They're here for your soup, Jace said with a wink. No, Althea smirked. They're here for our enhanced painkillers. The soup just gives them an excuse to come back every week. Althea, once a military commander, once a hunted fugitive, now ran a humble food and medicine outpost for the misfits of the system. The only Vayari for light years, she had become not a relic, but a friend. A healer. I still can't believe you learned how to cook, Jace said, standing and stretching. 3 centuries without a meal. She shrugged. I missed a few things. And Tech. Zan asked, ever cautious. They're still looking, you know that. They're searching for a Vayari in hiding, Jace said. Not a local cook at a forgotten station. Sometimes Althea added, the best hiding place is right in plain sight. The door opened. A group of tired, dust-covered asteroid miners stepped in, grinning when they saw her. Heard, there's special soup today, one of them called. And some new painkillers too, another said under his breath. Althea nodded. Grab a seat, I'll bring it out. Jace watched her work, confident, strong. At peace, not the haunted warrior he'd once pulled from a cryopod. She'd found her place after the rush. Jace finished prepping the last batch of meds and found Althea by the window. She was staring out at the stars, at the distant light of Vayar Prime, the home she would never return to. Thinking, he asked, stepping beside her. Remembering, she said softly, it's been 3 months since we landed here, a year since you found me, and 301 since you went under her. Jace added, yeah, she smiled faintly. Time is strange, do you miss it? The past, every day, she said, but not like before. Now it's more like a phantom limb. You still feel the pain, but you learn to live with it. Jace looked out with her toward the faint shimmer of her homeworld. Think they still remember the traitor general. Maybe it's in a textbook, a footnote, or maybe a myth, she said, without bitterness. Doesn't really matter anymore. They stood in silence. X9 floated nearby, quiet, giving them space. After a while, Althea asked softly, how long do you think we can stay here? A simple question, but loaded. How long before Vanotech returned? How long before the past caught up? How long before they had to run again? Jace looked at her. A woman from another era, another world, and knew without a doubt he'd never felt more grounded. I think, he said gently, taking her hand. We'll stay until the past doesn't matter anymore. Althea turned to him, violet eyes catching starlight, and took his hand fully. No hesitation, no fear. Together they looked out at the endless stars, not as fugitives, but as 2 souls who'd finally found home. In each other, they had lost their worlds, their time, everything familiar, but they'd found something far rarer, far more precious, their second dawn. They say space is the coldest, loneliest place in existence, but I'm Jace Marlowe, and out there in the void, I found something impossible. A woman from a forgotten era, a warrior from a world that no longer exists. In the arms of the last of her kind, I found the home I never knew I needed. And for someone who once trusted no one, she found a reason to believe again. In me. The most precious relics aren't locked in vaults or displayed in museums. They're two lost souls colliding in the vastness of space and building something new together. A second dawn. If you've followed Jace and Althea this far, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what comes next. Every week, we bring you a brand new sci-fi story made for listeners like you. People who still believe that no matter how cold the stars get, there's always something human worth holding on to. Stay curious, stay kind, and we'll see you in the next story.